college students, I talk to high school students. When I meet young people, that is what gives me the biggest hope is I place my bet on the next generation to help humanity, to help the world improve, fight climate change, fight racial tensions, fight anti-immigrant sentiment. I think the next generation looks at the world very differently than myself or you or I, anyone else. I think they bring a much more positive perspective and they're much smarter than us. Biggest thing for any one of us, whether you're 20 or you're 60, is you have to keep up with the change by reskilling yourself. That is, I think, going to be the biggest key in terms of the future is how do you stay up to date? How do you get the new skills? Because almost every job is going to change. If you're a doctor, there might be an AI assistant that does 100% of your job, not 50%, not 80%, 100% of your job. Okay, that's coming in the next 5 years. So what does this doctor do in 5 years if an AI assistant is going to pretty much diagnose any disease you might have and recommend drugs and recommend a regimen and so forth? That is reality in 5 years.
We are seeing the Indian American rise to global politics or global power, if you want to call it that. And it's not just happening in North America, it's also happening in Europe. What is the push behind Indians going after power in foreign nations?
And so, there are many, many countries. The Indian diaspora is now 30 million strong across many different nations in the world. And they migrated to them in very different ways. So I'll step back a minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a beautiful day. Welcome to the Immigrant Nation podcast. Now, imagine arriving in America with just $8 in your pocket. That's difficult. But fast forward a few decades, and the same person becomes a Silicon Valley angel investor, a bridge between continents, and a philanthropic powerhouse. He is the co-founder of Sandhill Group, founder of Diaspora and the Corporate Eco Forum, and a trailblazer of Indian American leadership across the globe. Immigrants, today we have the privilege of hearing from Mr. Madhavan Rangaswami. Let's start with a soft question, something that will set the stage for all of us. Sir, if you can walk me through, you're sitting at your house, you're relaxing, do you secretly dance to Bollywood, enjoy a game of rugby, American football, cricket, or maybe Aussie rules all the way?
So you let the secret out of the bag, Martin. Thanks for having me. I thought you would really ask me a super hard question, but this answer is easy. When I have free time, I watch Australian rules football. Even though all our Indian friends are cricket mad, Australian rules football is my favorite sport. And in fact, I just returned from Australia last month where I binge watched a whole 4 days of Australian rules football matches in Adelaide, Australia. So that's how football mad I am. But as you know, Australian rules football is an obscure sport. Except for Australians, nobody else watches it. Don't ask me why I got into it, but it's somewhere between rugby and American football. That's all I can say. But there are 18 people on a side. They run around, smashing each other, kicking the ball, hand passing the ball. You can do so many things that are so interesting, and that's what got me excited. Yeah.
The Indian diaspora in the US is now over 5.2 million people strong. I found that very, very interesting because looking at that size of a representation, I was floored by the amount of power and influence that population represents. What has changed in the Indian diaspora in the last 2 decades that has put the population very strongly in North America?
Yeah, great question, Martin. Again, you have to understand the migration pattern of Indians to the United States. It's quite different than how Indians went to other countries. So the US population of Indian immigrants came here, first of all, to study. So they came here for a master's or PhD degree. That was the initial interest of the Indian community. So it's important to understand that the Indian diaspora in the US didn't come here as refugees. They didn't come here to look for jobs. They came here to study. So very, very different approach. So as they came here to study, they found jobs after their studies were completed, right? So that was the initial, migration pattern. But what happened in the 1990s, there was a seminal moment that changed the trajectory of the Indian American population in the US. And that's in the IT sector we would call Y2K, or year 2000. If you recall, in those days, for those of your listeners who are old enough, you will know that supposedly on January 1, 2000, the whole world was coming to a stop because all computers would fail, right? Because the date change from 1999 to 2000 would cause havoc in all the computers. So based on that premise, all the American companies, the Fortune 500 companies, needed to change and update their computer software. And the software in those days was written in obscure and old languages called COBOL and Fortran. And when the American companies looked around the US, they couldn't find these people. They were all senior citizens by that time, right? These were applications written in the 50s and 60s. So then they were desperate. They went looking around to see who knew these languages. And it so happened India was so far behind on technology that in the 1990s, they were using these languages in old computers in India. So there was a large population of Indians who knew COBOL, who knew Fortran. So they desperately sought these people out, and using the H-1B visa program, brought in tens of thousands of Indians into the US to work on these software programs. That was the big inflection point for our community, was that huge surge between 1990 and 2000 of these folks to come here to fix software. And of course, we all know it. On January 1, 2000, nothing happened to computers. Everything worked. ATMs worked, planes were flying, people were happy. But as a result, we got this huge population in the US.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So we are seeing the Indian American rise to global politics, or global power, if you want to call it that. And it's not just happening in North America, it's also happening in Europe. What is the strategy? What is the push behind Indians going after power in foreign nations?
Yeah, and so, there are many countries. The Indian diaspora is now 30 million strong across many different nations in the world. And they migrated to them in very different ways. So I'll step back a minute and give you a little bit of the history of migration of Indians. So the first big migration in recent times happened in the 1800s, when the British colonialists were governing India. They needed labor. They needed administrators. They needed these kinds of people in all their colonies. So they found Indians to be really the kind of people that they could send to these countries. So there was a huge migration of Indians to many different parts of the world, to the West Indies, to parts of Asia, and different colonies of theirs all across the world. So that was a different kind of migration. These were labor primarily. So they were not educated. They were going there to work on sugar plantations and cotton farms and such, rubber plantations and so forth. So that was the original migration of Indians. But like I said, in the 1990s, the second level of migration happened across the world. This was more voluntary in a sense. So these were people in the IT sector and professionals who went to these different countries to work on information technology, right? And the third level of migration that has happened more recently are rich Indians. These are the millionaires and the billionaires of India moving overseas, along with a lot of startup founders. So as you know, India has over 100,000 startups. A lot of these founders are setting up shop in Dubai, in Singapore, in London, in Australia, in the United Arab Emirates, and US, and so forth. So those are the three levels. And the reason that the Indian population is much more influential now is the third level of migration, which is the people who are highly educated and with a lot of money and companies moving into these countries.
We've seen in the US the Joe Biden's vice president Kamala Harris, who has Indian or Asian background, in a powerful position. With that, we've also seen with the new government where Ms. Trump has gone on and called Vivek Ramaswamy to service, and the FBI chief Kash Patel. Looking back, I'm also realized that about 16% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies, we discovered that there's not just political power, but there is also technical, medical, on and on and on, in all categories of what we consider a modern society. We realized that Indians were doing very well in all the countries that they migrated to. What is the key? What is the secret that immigrants from other continents can start to emulate within the Indian population? Because over the years, we've had quite a bit about the Jew population and how they've been successful in every place they go. With their history, we understand that their history is so long, over 100 years. But for India is still a young democracy, and the population is still a very young population. So what's the key? How is an Indian parent raising their children so that they're becoming very competitive in the marketplace?
This is an important one for all immigrants to understand. And I was one of those. I grew up in India. I came to the United States only when I was 20. But when I look back at those formative years as a teenager, as a child, and so forth, you can see there are some patterns. I would say the biggest success of Indian immigrants you can relate back is to their parents. The parents set a tone that every child in India has to have really, really good education.
Mm-hmm.
If you have good education, that does a lot for everyone. So this is the single most important thing I'd like your listeners and your viewers to take away as parents or as young people, is get a really good education. That is the single biggest reason for the success of the Indian diaspora. Is when you look at the Indian diaspora, for example, the In Diaspora, my nonprofit, has done a major impact report on the US. You will see that the Indian American community is the most educated community in the United States. That comes not just by going to college, it's by studying hard, working hard. That goes along with getting an education. It's not merely getting an education and getting 2.0 grades or 3.0 grades. Indian parents expect every child to get 4.0 or A grades. So it's the parents that set the tone for our community by making us go to school, go to college, and like, for example, in my family, if you just have a bachelor's degree, that's not good enough. You're considered a failure. Okay,
Yeah.
You got to get at least a master's, and they prefer a PhD. Okay, so that is the psyche of Indian parents. And so they make you study hard, work hard, and that, I think, is the single biggest reason for our success.
That's very interesting that you say that. I'm finding about 66% of Indian Americans are first generation immigrants, while 34% were born in the US. Do you see a generational gap forming, or are we successfully passing down our cultures and values to our communities as we're birthing children in foreign countries?
Yeah, I think for the second generation, that influence is still very strong. For example, my children here, we brought them up on the same track. Go to college. My older daughter has a master's degree, and my wife wants to know why she hasn't got a PhD. My younger daughter has a bachelor's degree. Now she's applying for an MBA. So clearly, the next generation is taking some of the things that we are giving to them, some of the values we're giving to them, but they're also branching out in other ways. The next generation of the Indian community here wants to do more public service. they don't want to necessarily get an education to be a business person. They want to help the environment. They want to go join a government department. They want to run for politics, and so on and so forth. So slowly their values are changing because now they are born in a different country. All their friends are different than my friends in India. So they're definitely influenced a lot by their peer group, which tends to want to do whatever they want to do. So the old Indian joke was every Indian parent wanted you to be a doctor or an engineer. Those are the only two choices you got. Now, the next generation is looking at a much broader set of occupations and professions. But I think it's the following generation, the third generation, that I think where we'll start to see what the differences are. And since we're a young community, we don't have too many of those third generation people in our community to see, are they still all going to college? Are they still working hard and studying hard? That's a question that still remains.
I find that really fascinating. See, I want you to dig a little bit deeper, and pardon me for going here. There is a formal education and then there is informal education. Can you speak to the benefit of both?
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, there's the whole college, university kind of formal education that happens. But the other set of qualities of many Indian parents are what they do at home. For our community, is a lot of education going on in the house in terms of going back and learning scriptures, things of that sort, where it's not, it's learning your heritage, but it's learning through chanting, through reading books, to going to temples and other religious places. So there's a lot of that happening. And so, I think it's a combination of that. The other things about the Indian community where someone did studies on the Indian community is the fact that there's a lot of arranged marriages, meaning your parents choose who you marry, has a lot to do with this. The other thing is the divorce rate in our community. I'm not saying every couple is happy, but the number of divorces is in the single digits compared to the American, percentage of 50% or whatever it is. So it's the home life and stability at home has a lot to do in terms of how we are set up in our lives as we become adults. So I think a lot of that soft skills and the soft things that happen at home are equally important, not just going to college.
Indian students are among the top contributors to the US education system. How does that academic excellence translate into long-term benefit for both the US and India? And are there any policies in place to maximize these advantages?
Yeah, and this is a point where I think things can change. I think the Indian students in the United States are the largest ethnic group in the US. They are also spend about $10 billion a year getting educated in the US. So it's a very large and influential community, but I think the numbers are slowing now all across the world. We're finding that the number of Indian students going overseas is changing because a lot of the Western countries are adopting new rules and regulations for immigration. This is well known. If you get educated in the U.S., will you be able to get a job, and so on and so forth. So that's a thing that I think you'll see a lot of change in the future. But what has happened is that the Indian students who have got jobs here in the U.S. are sending money back as well, sending money to their homes, not just for their families, but they're investing in India and so on and so forth. Last year, the overall Indian diaspora sent about $120 billion to India, out of which 26 billion came from the United States. So the U.S. is the number one remitter of money to India in the past decade or so. So that is a very important factor for India because of the foreign exchange that comes to India every year. And it's increasing at 10% a year. So this money next year will be 130 or 140 billion dollars. And so this is helping the Indian government really invest in its future, invest in infrastructure in India. And that's why the Prime Minister Modi of India comes to the world, and every country he goes, he talks to the diaspora. He loves us, he talks to us, he interacts with us, and encourages us to invest in India. So that also is playing a very important role.
Find it fascinating that you have this large group of immigrants that have left their home country, yet there is a massive connection to their home country, and the government system seems to be very integrated in that connection. What should foreign governments who are looking at how quickly India is accelerating and thinking we need to do something, what do they have to learn from the Indian model?
Yeah, I think several things. One is, to make sure that they can convey to the countries immigrants are going to that their people are good people, honest people, hardworking people. Building that image is very, very important, because throughout the world now, as we all know, there's such a big anti-immigrant, environment, rhetoric, and media is contributing to it as well, and so forth. So it's very important that whether you come from India or any country in Africa or Latin America, that the home country encourages a narrative and puts forth, reports and analysis showing how these immigrants are contributing to their new countries, right? That's why we at Diaspora did a report last year called The Impact of the Indian Diaspora in the United States. We worked with a leading consulting firm, Boston Consulting Group, so that it was a very valid report to talk about the impact, the amount of taxes we pay, the amount of jobs we create, the amount of doctors who serve patients, the amount of teachers who teach students. It's very, very important that every government in the world help the immigrants coming from their country by portraying them realistically, right? So that it's a very different thing. We know 99% of the immigrants coming to any country are good people.
Yes.
But the image of the immigrant community is negative in most of the Western countries that immigrants come to, whether it's the US or Canada or UK or Australia. There's a very much of an anti-immigrant sentiment. And I think it's caused because people don't understand immigrants. Because when immigrants first go to a country, they tend to keep to themselves. They stay in their own places. They don't interact that much with the local I mean, you know what I mean. We all have done that, right? I think that needs to change, but the home countries need to help. I think the Foreign Affairs Ministry and the departments need to be working with media in the countries like US and Canada to talk about the immigrant population in real terms. What they do for United States or what they do for Canada. What is their role in society? That's not coming out, and I think that is really an important thing for all governments to take away from the Indian model.
I am so very thankful that you have reinforced a belief I have shared over and over in this podcast, which is we immigrants need to vacate our immigrant communities and go to strange places where people don't look or talk like us.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that is really, really important, not just for our own success, but also for those who don't know us, to get to know us. That being said, the last 2 or so decades, the world has been shrinking. The world has been shrinking because we communicate faster, we can communicate long distances. The world has been shrinking because of internet. And now the world is rapidly going to shrink because of the onset of artificial intelligence. As an innovator, an investor, a parent, speaking to immigrant populations, how should we prepare for what AI and how AI is about to change the world in the next 4 to 5 years?
This is one of the biggest technological changes I've seen. I've lived in the Bay Area, Silicon Valley, San Francisco for over 4 decades. So I was fortunate enough and lucky enough to see everything come from the personal computer that Steve Jobs released in the 1980s to bigger computers to cloud computing to software as a service. I mean, all these different, the mobile phone revolution and all. I've seen, I had a front row seat here being in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley. But this is the biggest shift I've seen is artificial intelligence, because it's not just the internet. It's not just computing power. It's not any of these things. It's like, it's going to change everything we do. Everything we do, the way we study, the way we cook, the way we work, the way we do travel, everything is going to change dramatically. So I think the biggest thing for any one of us, whether you're 20 or you're 60, is you have to keep up with the change by reskilling yourself. That is, I think, going to be the biggest key in terms of the future is, how do you stay up to date? How do you get the new skills? Because almost every job is going to change. If you're a doctor, there might be an AI assistant that does 100% of your job, not 50%, not 80%, 100% of your job. Okay, that's coming in the next 5 years. So what does this doctor do in 5 years if an AI assistant is going to pretty much diagnose any disease you might have and recommend drugs and recommend a regimen and so forth? That is reality in 5 years. Whether you're an educator, you don't need professors in classrooms teaching everything, because there's going to be an AI assistant that walks you through your curriculum and does your examinations, helps you with your homework and everything else, right? So if all these products are going to come out, every individual, whether you have a bachelor's degree or master's degree or no degree, is going to have to reskill. So you have to constantly be educating yourself. I think that's going to be the rule for the next decade or two, is you have to be educating yourself all the time. You can't just be happy you got an engineering degree or a law degree or whatever it is. You're going to have to really learn new skills.
From your position, how do you see the diaspora's, if I may call it, an identity changing? And with that, over time, from being guests in North America or in Dubai or South Africa or wherever we migrate, to becoming host and policy influencers?
Yeah, one of the good things about our diaspora is they are kind of taken to heart an Indian part of their DNA, which is called seva. Seva is an Indian word that means selfless service. So, which means giving to others, helping people, helping society. So a lot of the diaspora now, the younger generation, is going into public service. So they're working in government, they're becoming politicians, and so on and so forth. I think that is a very important difference between my generation when we came to this country and our kids. And that is going to hold them in good stead, because, like you mentioned, in the United States, every administration of every president, the growing number of Indians in the administration is evident. Even, like you said, whether it's a Biden administration, which was Democratic, and now the Republican administration under President Trump, more and more Indians are being placed in very high positions of power and influence. So I think that's another thing other immigrant communities can learn, is to get involved in your community, get involved in politics. It doesn't have to be running for president. It can be running for school board. It can be running for a supervisor in your little community, whatever be it, right? Be out there, active. I think that is going to be very helpful in many, many ways, not just making you a better person and helping society, but helping your ethnic community as well.
Why is that important, helping your community?
Like one of my political friends says, if you're not at the dinner table, you're on the menu. You must have heard that, right? It's simple. If you're not active in the community, You're
Oh
not
my
going to be
goodness.
included. You're going to be included in the menu. That's about it.
Let me add on to that. My dad said, "Oh, you'll be sitting under the table eating the droplets."
Yes, exactly, exactly. So it is very, very important these days, especially as the world changes so dramatically, to be in front, to be
Yeah.
involved, engaged.
Yes. Very interesting. So you come to America with $8. If I am coming to America today and I am part of those three groups you broke down, legal, illegal, educated, non-educated, where do I start and how do I find my footing to become a powerhouse?
Yeah. So I think the first thing, if you're coming, whether you are with in the United States, other countries, documented, undocumented, I mean, I think the main thing is to make sure that you move with the right people, because a lot of times when immigrants come to a country, they are naive. Maybe they don't know where to go, what to do, and they end up associating with the wrong people. That I think is a very important point to consider right up front, that you're not moving with people who get you into trouble or do illegal things, things of that sort. That I think is the easy way out. You go in and someone gets you down a path that takes you the wrong way. So I think really making sure you follow your conscience, you follow a right path. I think is really, really the first fundamental thing you have to do. Okay, is moving with the right people, associating with the right people. So it might be you are a new immigrant, you go to your church community, you go to your temple community, whoever it is. Moving with people who will take you down the right path and will help you. I think looking for people who will help. Trying to get a mentor. That's the other thing most of us never thought, and I never thought when I came to this country, is
Yeah.
having someone who's a mentor to you, who can slap you, who can guide you the right way and say, hey, you're getting into trouble. Find that, because when you're an immigrant, you don't have that support system. So whether you're legal, illegal, documented, undocumented, studying, coming here for a job, coming as a refugee, find the right community, find the right mentor. That is the most important thing.
I love to give credit where I see credit. Indian values around education, family, and perseverance are outstanding. How do those roots help the diaspora communities thrive in high-stake environments?
Yeah, this one is goes back again to India itself. So as you know, I mean, you're from Kenya, and we were all British colonies. So one of the things that the British left was a complicated set of rules and regulations. And now successful governments, succeeding governments, have created even more rules and even more regulations. And of course, a lot of these systems have corruption in them, and all this happens. So when you're in India, we learn how to deal with ambiguity. Okay, that is something that has stood us in good stead when we are here to run a company or be in politics. Learning how to deal with a situation that's not black or white, it's gray. And in India, I'm sure in Kenya, it's the same. A lot of things are gray. Is this a rule that is supposed to be implemented, do this way or that way, right? You have no idea. And so a lot of times, we have that skill set in most of our countries. And I think that's one of the things when you're running a company in the United States or whatever, there's a lot of decisions you have to make where it's not clear. And learning how to navigate that, I think, has been one of the hidden gems of why I think Indian CEOs are successful, is learning to deal with navigating through uncertainty, through very difficult times. I think that's a big key.
Many years ago, you coined the phrase angel investor. Walk us through the process of how you coined the phrase and most of us know what that means today, but how do immigrants take advantage of that opportunity today?
So this happened by accident, so I won't take full credit for it. So I quit my job in the tech industry because I had a big exit. The company I was with went public, and of course, when that happens, you come to money. So when I left that, I was trying to figure out what to do in life. When being in the tech industry and with startups, I just started helping startups. And help can be in many ways. One is they wanted money. Second, they want you to get involved, because if you've been successful, they want to tap into your network, into your thinking and ideas and help. So I started not only putting in money, but helping these companies navigate, get customers, get employees, get more funding and so forth. And there was no terminology for it at that time. No terminology. So people would come to me and say, "You're a venture capitalist." And I say, no, I don't invest other people's money. I invest my own money, right? And then as I was doing this, the Wall Street Journal found out about this. This is a fascinating story. Found out about it. One day I get a call from the editor saying, I want to send a reporter to meet you. And then I got a call from the reporter from New York saying, I'd want to come visit San Francisco, but I want to follow you for a few days. I want to start with you in the morning and be with you all day till you go to bed, the whole day. So I talked to my wife and said, is this okay to have this lady come and spend 3-4 days following me? And she agreed. And so literally the reporter was with me through breakfast, to my meetings, to dinner meetings, and all throughout the day. And then she went back and said, I'm going to write an article on this new kind of investor. And she was going to put it in the back of the newspaper. But when she submitted the article, the editors loved it so much, they said, we're going to put you on the front page. And when the Wall Street Journal does this, and when they introduce a new term or a new word, they put it in quotes. So this is the first time they said, here's an angel investor. And that's how the term got coined, was being introduced in the Wall Street Journal with that new word.
Okay. Very interesting.
So that's how it all happened.
Very interesting story. So walk us through how in today's world, immigrants can take advantage of investing as angel investors.
So a couple of ways. One is it's not always about money. It's rolling up your sleeves and jumping in and giving your time. A lot of times people who are angel investors also, in addition to investing, work for sweat equity. You might invest in a company. Say you put $10,000 into a company, you get a certain number of shares. You also end up helping the company. They give you more shares. Okay. So sometimes you don't even have to put money in. You can just jump in and spend 10 hours a week or 20 hours a month or whatever, be it helping the company, and you can earn shares that way as well. So it's not always about money, okay? Because not everybody has 10,000 or 20,000 to put into anything. So money is one component, time is the other valuable component. But the third thing I will tell people is, if you're going to become an angel investor, you should be prepared to invest in at least 10 companies. Why is that? Because the dirty secret in our industry is 9 out of 10 companies fail. So if you only invested in one company, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to get your money back. Okay? So just go into it. Not every deal is a Facebook or a Google. Those are the ones you hear about. 9 out of those 10 deals I've invested in have failed. Okay. So don't go in and saying, I'm going to put money in one company and I think, oh my God, this is great. It is not. The chances are it won't work out. So if you're going to be an angel investor, consider money and time. Third, investing in a portfolio of companies. So that's the third one. The fourth one, I would say, is it's going to take about 10 years if your company is successful, at least 10 years before you get any money back. So don't put in money thinking you're going to get something in 2 or 3 years. It's a 10-year horizon. So these are all the caveats you have to think through before you write a check. Okay. And
Yes.
so most of my deals, I've gotten tax write-offs. So, and once in a while, I get something that gives me more returns than all the write-offs. Okay. And I've been lucky enough because of this. I've not had a job in 28 years, but I was lucky enough to get in early, lucky enough to have a wide, diverse portfolio, and lucky enough to be able to wait 10 years to see results. So these are some of the lessons I've learned. And it's painful when you write off a company, you write off your investment. It's a very painful thing, but it's part of business.
We are seeing a tremendous amount of immigrants in the diaspora who are returning back to their countries. Is this the start of what may be considered a reverse brain drain?
I don't think so. I think it's now become more bi-directional. People are leaving, people are going back. So I don't think the net is an outflow still.
Of course.
It's not an inflow. But people are going back, I think, for several reasons. One is they have aging parents in India and they have to take care of them. So they try to find a job or start a company in India. The other thing is India is growing. It's the fastest growing economy. Lots of opportunities out there. Also, the country has much better infrastructure than when I left 40 some years ago. Roads are great, airports are great. There are no blackouts at homes because of electricity. There's air conditioning, so the lifestyle is much improved in the homeland. So I think all of that is causing some people to go back, but there's still a net outflow of people because there are not enough jobs in India still. India graduates about 1 million college students every month. So you need to find 12 million jobs a year. Okay. And they're not
Yes.
finding jobs. So many of them have to go overseas. So there's still a net outflow, but there's still some people coming back in as well.
Very interesting. How do we preserve our culture or identity across generations, especially in a world obsessed with assimilation?
Yeah. So one of the things that the Indian community has done wherever they go is to put up their religious, places of worship. So, in fact, last week I participated in the opening of a new temple here in the San Francisco Bay Area. So a lot of that has happening throughout the world. Wherever you go, you'll find Indian temples being opened. That's a great way for the community to stay in touch with our heritage, with our roots. That's one thing. Second is, of course, Bollywood keeps us in touch with India. So there are lots, not just movies, but Bollywood musicians come here and perform in concerts across the world. So a lot of that happens. So there's a lot of cultural interaction. But the biggest secret that keeps us, I think, in touch with our roots is yoga. Yoga is the biggest export of India that is under the radar. For example, in the United States, I don't think, Martin, you'll know this, there are 36,000 yoga studios. 36,000, more than in India. There are more yoga studios in the US than in India. Okay? So people are looking to spirituality and wellness and mindfulness as a means of coping with stress and pressure these days. I don't know if you've done it, but I would encourage you to please go visit a yoga studio and at least see what this is all about. This is 5,000 years of Indian tradition and mindfulness and spirituality all put together for the world to use and world to leverage and the world to benefit from.
I'm so fascinated that you went to yoga because I can't help that in every neighborhood I am now going, I am seeing a thriving Indian cuisine, right? And so these very interesting restaurants that we've started reading about, how much of Indian food is now influencing the rest of the world?
A great one. I think yoga is one, and then if you're talking of soft power of any country,
Yes.
the media is one. Music, dance, movies. Then you think in India's case it's yoga, but the other big thing is food, right? Because
Mhm.
Chinese food is probably the most popular food in the world. When you
Right.
think, you go to any country, any city, you'll find Chinese restaurants, right? Indian restaurants are now finally starting to have their day in the sun, if you will. Indian food now has become much more popular, and the good thing about Indian food is we are well known for the $6.99 all you can eat buffet. So if you're ever hungry at lunch, you can go to many Indian restaurants, and for $6 or $8, you can eat as much as you want, right? So,
Mhm.
but having said that, we are also now moving upscale to more of the Michelin star restaurants and such. So it's starting, but it's not as big as Chinese or Mexican or Italian food, but it's forming a niche as we speak. And I think over time, as more and more people are curious about different ethnic foods, I think it'll become bigger. Later this fall, in New York, there's going to be a huge India festival coming for
Mhm.
3 days,
Yes.
including performances at Lincoln Center, performance in Central Park. A whole marketplace is going to be set up in New York with Indian food, fashion, and products. So these are the kind of things that people are doing to kind of bring out Indian culture in a more formal way. So all kinds of things happening. It's pretty exciting times to be.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So, you're born and raised in Chennai, India. Um, and now you have navigated multiple boardrooms in North America. What does the boy in you say to you?
Well, I mean, I have to tell you this. I have had what everybody now calls imposter syndrome. So you're sitting in this going, why am I here? You know,
Right.
uh, what am I doing in this situation? Do I deserve to be here? Is this a fluke? Uh, so definitely some of that does occasionally go through my mind
Hmm.
on one side. And the other side, I go, look, I've educated myself, I've worked hard, I deserve a seat at the table, right? So I think when you're an immigrant, I think a lot of us go through this, like you're saying, why am I doing this podcast? Why do I deserve to do this? How am I seeing success this way? Am I the right person? So that does go through my mind for
Hmm.
sure. And I think some of this has been just the old colonial past and all these things subliminally getting in the way because I think whether you're Kenyan or Indian, we've been successful in our own countries in the past. It wasn't like we needed a foreign power to come in to tell us what to do and teach us everything in life. So I think we just need to look back and say, hey, look, our countries have proud traditions, heritage, history. That's why we're here.
So, Nelson Mandela, the world over, is recognized as a leader. And he once said he learned to lead from his dad, who was a tribal chief. And the biggest lesson he took from that was in any conversation, he was to shut up, listen keenly, and speak last, if necessary. You've led large and small organizations and you still continue to lead. What are some of the key leadership qualities that you've utilized to be effective, efficient over time?
Yeah, there are many styles of leadership. I've seen most of those in action throughout my life. One is being authoritarian and dictatorial. That's one way to lead, is by fear and uh, sheer force. That to me doesn't work often.
Mhm.
um, My style tends to be more informal. My style tends to be more lead by example. If you want your organization to work hard, you have to work hard. Okay, you can't expect your team to work 8, 10, 12 hours and you work 2 hours. So you have
Yeah.
to lead by example. You have to be inclusive. You cannot dictate things. You gotta have teams form their own opinions. You can guide them. You can send them in a certain direction, but you can't make the decisions for them. You also have to allow them to fail. That's the other thing. You don't want your team concerned. If I make a mistake, I'm going to get fired or demoted, or I'm not going to get promoted. So I think a lot of this easier said than done, but
Yes.
you have to think through it all the time. But I think one of the most important things I've learned is never criticize people in public. If someone has done something wrong, a lot of times you'll be in a team meeting and you point them out and say, you shouldn't be doing it that way. I think it's better to pull them aside one on one to do that, but praise in public. So if someone has done a good job, tell everybody in public, hey, you did a great job with this project. But when you're going to pull them up, do that in private. A lot of times you find people get criticized in public, and that is really bad for the morale of an organization. So a lot of things
Mhm.
you pick up. I don't think I'm the perfect leader, but I'm still learning. There's so many new situations that you encounter,
Yeah.
and you go, my God, why did I do that? Right? So I'm still a work in progress, but along the way, I've learned a lot of things, and I'm also a very loyal person. So I tend to give people a lot more leeway, even if they make mistakes, because and most of my team and the organizations I've led have been there 2, 5, 10 years in the organization. So very little attrition. So I like that, keeping it as a family as opposed to a business.
You have taken great calculated risks. In that, you've had some successes, and obviously, like you said earlier, you have had some failures. If you could whisper one sentence to a young a young immigrant who's enthusiastic about investing in North America, what type of advice would you give them?
As someone young and new coming into a country, I would say uh, take risk. Definitely take risk, because that's an age when you can overcome your challenges and overcome your failures, rather than taking risk when you're older. So even when I'm looking at startup founders, I've seen two young kids who have no money starting a company, and then I've seen someone who's a senior citizen starting a company. I'd encourage the senior citizen not really think twice. Okay, so I think taking risk is something you got to do, but do it with purpose. You know, do it with a purpose, not taking risk because it's great to take risk. I took risk coming to my first company in Silicon Valley, where I didn't realize it was a startup, because in those days there was no term called startup either. So I went to a
Mm-hmm.
company that had 20 employees. I was there for 3 years. The company did well. At the end of third year, it was Chapter 11. It went bankrupt. So, and I had worked so hard in that company, I never took a vacation day. So I had 3 years, 6 weeks of vacation that went away at the end. I never got paid, never took a vacation, right?
Yeah.
So you learn these hard lessons of no job at the end of 3 years, no vacation pay, and you have to go find the next thing. So I've taken such risks, but I was young. I was in my 20s, and I didn't have a mortgage. I lived in a tiny apartment. I had a cheap car. So I was able to get my next job, without too much problems, right?
Yes.
So I think you have to know what the downside is, because everyone always looks at the upside. I'm going to make money. I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to
Yeah.
do all this. No one says, what if you got fired? What if your company closes down? So take risk with a purpose, but also look at the worst case scenario before you go in. not just the best case scenario.
Absolutely. Talking about the worst case scenario, you once said in Diaspora, by the way, congratulations. I look at the amount of work you have been able to accomplish with in Diaspora, and it's very impressive. So thank you. Thank you for starting the organization and for getting us this far, because now you've challenged the majority of us to start looking within and build such a wonderful organization that caters for a certain group of people. If we can look within in Diaspora, the organization was started with the idea of turning success into significance. What moment sparked that shift for you personally?
Yeah. So I think initially the ethos of in Diaspora was like what Dalai Lama said so beautifully. Everybody's purpose in life is to help others.
Mhm.
Everybody's purpose in life is to help others. Worst case, don't hurt anyone, right? So really that is at the heart. So in Diaspora started to bring the community together and help everyone. And help everyone without a quid pro quo. That's an important thing. Because a lot of times you'll help someone and expect something back. So in Diaspora's explicit purpose was to help people with no quid pro quo. You just help, and maybe you'll get good karma sometime in this life or your next life or whatever, right? Don't expect anything back. So that I think was the purpose. So I think I encourage all diasporas to start a community effort with the sole job of helping everyone, right? Without expecting anything back, and then you get something back as a community. My local team here are the Golden State Warriors. I know they lost recently, but really the motto of the team was strength in numbers. The more people you help and the more people who are doing well, the whole community moves up. The whole community. So whether it's South African, Kenyan, Brazilian, whatever, start an organization that brings the community together. And that's why we not only moved from success to significance, but success really to be a force for good, which means making an impact, a positive impact on life, on society, right? It's not just making money, right? So that's why we say Indian Americans, we have 75,000 doctors of Indian origin in the US. It's not that they're rich and successful. They serve, Martin, 30 million patients a year in the US. I'm sure you have an Indian doctor in some place you've gone to, right? I mean, these people are actually helping people improve their lives and their health conditions. So same thing, we have 22,000 professors. They teach 3 to 5 million college students in the US. So that's the impact. So really it's not just success to significance, but significance to impact. What am I doing for society? That's the ultimate goal for all of us, is whatever you do in life, ultimately it has to make a positive impact on society.
Thank you for that. You launched the Corporate Eco Forum way before ESG was a buzzword. How did you sell climate responsibility to CEOs in a pre-grad world, yet how are we selling it now in modern America, modern India, and across the globe?
Yeah, a lot of things in life. I call myself the accidental tourist. I came to Silicon Valley accidentally because I met a consultant when I had my prior job in Houston, Texas. It was a dead-end job. And he said, "You have an MBA, you know computers. Why the hell are you in Houston? You should be in Silicon Valley." And was what gave me the impetus to move in 1982 to Silicon Valley. Same way with the Corporate Eco Forum. I started it because I had, at that time, 2 young daughters, 8 and 10 years old. And I said, I got to be a good role model for my kids. And one way to do that was to make the world a more sustainable place. So I didn't know anything about sustainability. Using my network, I talked to 50 Fortune 500 executives to find out what they do in their own corporations to make them more sustainable. And that was what gave me the reason to start the Corporate Eco Forum. And so I really did it as a way to tell my kids that we want to leave the world a better place for them. And that's still a thriving organization. We now have 90 of the world's largest companies, Amazon to Apple to Disney to Ford and General Motors and Boeing and United Airlines. Everybody really works together to lower greenhouse gas emissions, to buy more renewable energy, to build more sustainable supply chains and so forth, right? And that's having a big effect on making things better for all of humanity. So again, I got into it accidentally, but it's if you take the purpose of making everything better, I think somehow it works out at the end.
Obviously, your impact has been felt because the world is taking you seriously. So, on a lighter note, if we're speaking sustainability, what gives you hope today?
I put a lot of hope when I meet young people. Anywhere I go, I talk to college students, I talk to high school students. When I meet young people, that is what gives me the biggest hope, because they're bright, they're smart, they're savvy, they're so much smarter than us, so much better than us. I think the next generation is, I place my bet on the next generation to help humanity, to help the world improve, fight climate change, fight racial tensions, fight anti-immigrant sentiment. I think the next generation looks at the world very differently than myself or you or anyone else. I think they bring a much more positive perspective, and they're much smarter than us.
Very interesting. After all the work you have done and continue to do, and the lights are off, what brings you peace and joy? Is it a family meal, a soul walk, a good laughter?
I try to walk 5 miles a day. That's my zone when I can't use my phone, computer. I'm just walking, looking at things. And during COVID is when I walked, I think, 130 days of 5 miles a day. I don't do it as much, but maybe about half the month I walk at least 5 miles a day. That's
Yes.
what's my source of energy. And the other source, I think, is really a secret source, and that is, if you are working to give back, that gives you that what I talked about, seva or service. I think
Yes.
that gives you the energy more than anything else. Is if you're doing something for others, you get energy.
Mr. Rangaswami, for every young immigrant out there doubting themselves, what message do you want them to carry in their heart this very day?
I would say try again. There's an old proverb. And this happened to me. My first startup failed. My second startup failed. And I got lucky with my third startup. So you
Yes.
can encounter life and you go, I tried this, up, failed, tried that, I failed. And then it's very easy to give up. It's very easy to get negative. And say, I'm not deserving. I don't have the right credentials. I'm doing the wrong stuff. Don't give up, because it could be the fifth or sixth attempt that you're successful at something. So that's the single piece of advice, especially these days with social media and all these things. You think everybody's successful immediately, Immediately you gain success. It's not true. Everybody, when you look at their lives, none of them are overnight successes. None of them.
So very true. I always say life is not a 100-meter dash. It is a marathon. It takes time to get to your destination.
Absolutely. And it's so true. So true, if anything.
Absolutely. Thank you. Immigrants across the globe. Today we have been speaking with the amazing Rangaswami. Thank you, sir. You've reminded us that leadership isn't just about climbing, it's about lifting others, as you have done so. Your journey from $8 to Global influence is a roadmap for immigrant innovators and dreamers everywhere. To our listeners, if this episode inspired you, please share, because stories like this is what allows us to spend an hour with our guest. This has been the Immigrant Nation podcast, and it has been sponsored by Medicab, a non-emergency ambulance company that is in Texas and Florida. Thank you to Medicab for sponsoring this podcast. Sir, before we sign off, what do you want us to take home?
Yeah, several things. One is go check out indiaspora.org. And I hope immigrants listening will start organizations like ours. And the second thing is, if you want to connect, look me up on LinkedIn and connect with me on LinkedIn. So I tend to really be someone who connects, who shares, who tries and helps people across the world.
Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you so very much for making the time for us. We will stay in touch, and I'm sure the next time we're in San Francisco, we will connect with you.
First of all, nobody deserves or should be the target of any assassin.